Welcome back. Now the first thing we need is data, which in Kotlin and Android we represent in data classes. And we need a way to act on that data and our database, which in Kotlin would be a function call. However, in the database world, in Room language, we need entities and queries. An entity represents an object or concept and its properties that we want to store in the database. As such, an entity class defines a table, and each instance of that class represents a row in the table, and each property defines a column. A common entity is a person. In our app, it's going to be 1 night of sleeping. A query is a request for data or information from a database table or a combination of tables, or a request to perform some action on the data. Common queries are for getting, inserting, and deleting entities. For example, we could get all persons in a certain age bracket, or we could get all the sleep nights on record sorted by start time. So, how do we get from Kotlin data classes to entities that can be stored in tables? And from function declarations to SQL queries? Now, Room really helps us out here, doing all the hard work for us. We define each entity as a data class and the interactions as an interface. And then we use annotations to add metadata to both. And Room uses these annotated classes to create tables in the database and queries that act on the database. So to work with a Room database, we specifically need several types of annotated classes. We use data classes to define our tables, and we use annotations to specify things such as which property represents the primary key. We create interfaces that define how to interact with the database. In the case of Room, such a class is annotated as a DAO, or Data Access Object. For example, a common entity is for a person with a unique ID that's often used as the primary key, a first name, a last name, and then additional information represented by these dots. So you would have a person class with ID, names, and additional information as properties. Now for the Sleep Tracker app, we need an entity that represents 1 night of sleep. For a night of sleep, we want to record the start time, the end time, and a quality rating. And we need an ID to uniquely identify each night, which would look like this as simply a Kotlin data class. We have the ID, start time in milliseconds, which is set when we create a new entity, end time in milliseconds, which is on creation is the same as the start time, and a quality rating that we initialize to -1 to indicate the user has not made a choice yet. To turn this into a description of an entity for Room, we are going to annotate the class. I'm going to explain the annotations we are going to use for this entity, and you can find a few more in the documentation linked in the instructor notes. We are annotating the whole class with entity. By default, the name of the table for storing instances of this entity is the same as the class name. We can specify the name of the table to be different from the name of the entity class. For our app, we want the name to be Daily Sleep Quality Table to match with our naming conventions. Our first property is for a unique numeric primary key. We provide the night ID property for this and annotate it with primary key. To make sure the key is guaranteed unique, we let the system generate the key for us. If we set auto-generate to true as a parameter for primary key, it will be generated for us. We annotate the remaining properties with column info. The default name of the column is the same as the variable name, and we can change that by supplying a parameter with the annotation. Here is the complete annotated code representing a sleep night entity with the end time and sleep quality annotated in the same way. Let's write the code.